On December 31, 1994, Russian armored columns drove into Grozny. The maneuver triggered a 60-hour military catastrophe, but the political engine of this failure started much earlier. The timeline shifts back to 1991. How did a regional crisis turn into a full-scale war? The government fractured. The answer lay in Soviet arsenals operating without central control. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed. Moscow lost command over its distant territories. Chechnya declared independence. The region contained a population of roughly 1 million people. That number equaled a single administrative district of Moscow. Yet this local territory challenged the entire Russian Federation. The Republic built a national army. Local units seized leftover Soviet military infrastructure. Thousands of combat rifles, heavy armor units, and millions of ammunition rounds remained inside the borders. Moscow lost all oversight of the stockpile. 3 years of political paralysis followed. The central government negotiated. The region stockpiled weapons. The geopolitical standoff hit a dead end. By late 1994, the Federation exhausted all diplomatic leverage. Russian President Boris Yeltsin made a final political decision. He ordered the military to eliminate Johar Dudayev. The directive to eliminate the regional leader triggered a covert proxy deployment. To maintain deniability, the Federal Counterintelligence Service recruited an untraceable strike force. On November 26, 2,000 fighters crossed the border. They advanced with 40 T-72 tanks. Chechen defensive units intercepted the column deep inside the city. Sudden crossfire halted the advance. 20 destroyed tanks blocked the transit routes. The smell of burnt metal from the shattered armor saturated the streets. 150 soldiers died in the engagement. Losing 40 tanks meant the complete destruction of an entire tank battalion within an unofficial operation. Chechen forces secured the survivors. Studio cameras turned on. Lenses focused on the dirt-streaked faces of captured tank crewmen. The network broadcast the picture to the entire world. Strategic secrecy evaporated. The televised parade of prisoners transformed a covert military failure into a public political humiliation. The leadership abandoned proxy tactics immediately. Moscow convened an emergency meeting and approved the full-scale invasion plan. The invasion order dropped on December 11th. This directive instantly collided with a crippled military machine suffering from total logistical and personnel exhaustion. The armed forces lacked basic operational capacity. How did the command plan to take the city in 2 hours? No formal plan actually existed. Commanders assembled combat crews blind. High-ranking generals explicitly opposed the operational parameters. Hundreds of specialized officers and Spetsnaz operators refused deployment outright. Military police initiated mass arrests. The tactical hierarchy fractured. Under standard Soviet military doctrine, capturing an urban center of this massive scale required months of meticulous logistical preparation. It demanded fully synchronized motorized rifle divisions operating on fixed communication grids. Instead, High Command deployed improvised detachments scraped together from completely unrelated depleted units. Base-level assembly devolved into mechanical chaos. A unit commander scoured the staging tarmac for a qualified combat mechanic. He received an 18-year-old drafted infantryman. The recruit possessed basic weapons training, but had never sat inside heavy armor. Left with zero alternatives, the commissioned officer climbed down into the driver compartment. He grabbed the steering levers himself. Unsecured military frequencies broadcasted the systemic breakdown in real time. Tactical airwaves flooded with a chaotic crackle and overlapping screams for supply support. Maintenance battalions dispatched main battle tanks without standard machine gun ammunition. For 3 weeks, this fractured motorized force crawled toward the objective. By December 31st, the forward columns finally reached the primary urban outskirts. The strategic disconnect was absolute. The state president confidently broadcasted that the capital would fall in exactly 2 hours. Down in the staging sectors, desperate officers manually drove their own tanks because their drafted crews could not physically operate the complex hardware. The brigade halted and waited. The wait lasted 30 minutes. Command transmitted the advance signal. The operational blueprint collapsed immediately. The original directive required 4 synchronized armored columns to secure the perimeter simultaneously. Only 2 breached the city limits. Friendly artillery mistakenly targeted one adjacent brigade. An airborne regiment explicitly refused the assault order. General Pulikovsky commanded the remaining northern group. It became the primary strike force. 2,700 personnel, 100 BMPs, 50 tanks. The offensive fractured into 2 isolated vectors. The 131st MyCop Brigade pushed toward the railway station. The 81st Guards Regiment advanced along a parallel street toward the central square. Tactical linkage between flanks failed. The columns advanced blindly. Mutual fire support was geometrically impossible. Officers received their final routing coordinates via unencrypted radio frequencies. The 131st, deployed in a linear convoy, tracked vehicles maintained a 5-meter distance. This spacing violates fundamental urban warfare doctrine. A 5-meter interval turns an entire armored column into a single stationary target. Detonating the lead machine traps all trailing units inside a confined corridor. Command expected disorganized militias. Actual enemy manpower exceeded intelligence forecasts by 20 times. The columns of the 131st Brigade advanced toward the station without taking a single round of incoming fire. By 1300 hours, the lead assault group reached the Grozny railway station. The objective appeared secure. Why was there no resistance on the streets? The columns voluntarily drove into a prepared tactical trap. For 2 hours, the armor rolled through a void. At the city perimeter, red spray paint on a concrete sign delivered a clear warning: "Welcome to hell." But the sector remained completely quiet. The steady hum of working streetlights echoed over the empty asphalt. The urban grid was totally deserted. Yet the civilian infrastructure remained fully operational. Warm light glowed inside the windows of empty apartment blocks. This simple electrical illumination created a fatal false sense of security. The sudden absence of enemy forces triggered a profound psychological dissonance, convincing the advancing officers that the defense had completely collapsed. The deeper the armor pushed, the more the tactical vigilance degraded. The physical reality was a geometrical disaster. The railway station was a textbook urban kill zone. It was a massive open plaza, completely surrounded by dense, multi-story architecture. These concrete buildings provided optimal elevation for converging crossfire and top-down anti-tank strikes. The brigade had navigated directly into the exact center of the Chechen defense network. The trap was fully armed. Infantry fighting vehicles rolled onto the open square. Drivers parked the heavy armor in dense, perfectly straight rows. Commanders issued no orders to secure the perimeter. The infantry stayed inside the vehicles without attempting to establish defensive positions. By the morning of January 1st, friendly fire casualties would reach 60%. But a few hours prior, the catastrophe could still be aborted. The illusion of an empty city dissipated when the final warning to Colonel Ivan Savin sounded over the 131st Brigade's frequency. Was it possible to avoid casualties on the day of the assault? A few hours before the attack, the window of opportunity remained open. Chechen Field Commander Turpal Ali Atguriev transmitted on the open radio channel. He requested the brigade commander. The voice on the radio deliberately used an old army nickname, Alik. This specific detail functioned as a clear operational marker. The opposing commanders knew each other perfectly from their shared years of service in the Soviet military. Atguriev outlined the compromised perimeter. He urged an immediate withdrawal to prevent total unit destruction. Savin processed the intelligence. He recognized the tactical trap, but data meant nothing against protocol. The rigid Soviet command doctrine did not allow tactical flexibility at the brigade commander level. The structure excluded any retreat without explicit headquarters sanction. The vertical of power systematically paralyzed local leadership. The system deprived a tactical officer of the ability to act on real-time reconnaissance. He blindly obeyed the strategic directive. Savin would not survive the day. Atgiriev survived the urban combat, only to die in a Russian prison in 2002. The chain of command remained absolute. Colonel Savin refused to violate the order of his headquarters. Minutes after Savin confirmed compliance, a transmission cut through the tactical network. Heavy static hissed across the frequency. Then, a voice broadcast the signal to initiate the coordinated operation on Pervomaiskaya Street. Welcome to hell. Headquarters expected a rapid armored march straight to the city center. Instead, the unit advanced blindly into a locked kill zone, operating without maps or reliable navigation. The 81st Guards Motor Rifle Regiment moved in tight column formation. An anti-tank grenade struck the lead vehicle. Metal ruptured. The column halted instantly. Seconds later, a second warhead eliminated the rear machine. Explosions sealed the route. Dozens of heavy armored vehicles ground their tracks against asphalt, frantically attempting to pivot within the narrow street limits. There was no space. The 81st Regiment drove into a classic firebag. Standard Soviet urban warfare manuals detailed this exact mechanical method of isolating armored columns. Urban infrastructure operated as a calibrated engineering weapon. Defending units had previously dismantled and swapped the street signs. Advancing tank crews lacked accurate topographic data. Blinded detachments navigated by guesswork, steering their machines deeper into the pre-planned ambush grid. The regiment lost operational cohesion within hours. Simultaneously, the primary strike hit the railway station. The 131st Brigade held the terminal perimeter. Combat veterans from the Abkhazian Battalion led the assault. They utilized the station's placement between two defensive rings to concentrate fire from multiple elevations. Command dispatched a reinforcement element to break the siege. The second assault group followed the main force with a 20-minute interval. They never reached the objective. Enemy fire intercepted and completely annihilated the formation on the approach to the station. Mathematics dictated the destruction of the column. The enemy exploited the precise engineering flaws of the T-72 and T-80 platforms. Why did heavy armor find itself defenseless? Urban geometry neutralized their firepower. The reason lay in the structural elevation limits of the main guns. A gunner detects a threat above. He pulls the firing yoke. The 125mm 2A46 cannon rises. The steel barrel elevates and abruptly locks with a heavy metallic clunk. The mechanism maxes out at exactly 13 degrees. At a distance of 50 meters, the main gun cannot physically aim above the 4th floor. The target building has a 5th floor. An RPG-7 operator stands there in a complete blind spot. He fires downward. Armor thickness became irrelevant. The roof and side plating could not stop direct hits from basements and upper levels. Visual inspection of the wreckage reveals a critical system failure. Hollow steel boxes hung on the turrets. Commanders deployed these machines urgently. Technicians never inserted the essential explosive filler into the dynamic protection cassettes. Even fully equipped units carried the outdated Contact 1 reactive armor. This system provided zero defense against simultaneous strikes from multiple trajectories. The infantry stayed inside the BMP. While tank crews burned due to technical armor flaws, battalion command collapsed from a complete failure in electronic security. Officers broadcasted the entire offensive live to the enemy. Russian units relied on open analog very high-frequency channels. They used unencrypted radios. Every coordinate went out in the clear. The enemy held a direct technological advantage. Chechen assault teams utilized commercial Motorola handheld radios. This hardware provided secure tactical communications across the urban grid. Federal forces broadcasted blindly through legacy Soviet stations. Total transparency. The Russian network functioned as an open intelligence feed. Command structures disintegrated. Infantrymen remained paralyzed inside their BMPs. Conscripts refused to dismount. The vehicles turned into stationary targets. Enemy squads dismantled the buttoned-up armor at point-blank range. The city contained no random kill zones. The defense utilized 3 concentric rings. The advancing columns drove straight into the center. Brigade Commander Savin sustained a severe shrapnel wound. He maintained control. He transmitted continuous distress signals over the compromised channels. No reinforcements materialized. The radio ether became a tool for psychological pressure. A Chechen operator's laugh echoed clearly across the main Russian command frequency. The trapped troops listened. Then the High Command announced a unilateral New Year's ceasefire. They implemented the truce exactly 15 minutes before midnight. Losing control over the radio frequencies inevitably led to a complete loss of coordination and a sheer catastrophe on the morning of January 1st. 60%. Friendly fire caused exactly that massive share of all Russian casualties. Who inflicted the most damage on the military units that morning? Their own assault aviation. Strike aircraft descended over the city. Pilots lacked exact ground coordinates. They spotted armored columns moving through the dense urban blocks. They locked on. Bright flashes of cluster munitions ripped through the morning air. Heavy shrapnel shredded the armor below. The aviation obliterated their own Western group of forces. General Staff simply failed to inform the pilots about this deployment. Dozens of soldiers died instantly. Burning vehicles blocked the streets. In modern conventional conflicts, friendly fire rarely exceeds 10 to 15%. A 60% rate represents a critical systemic anomaly. The military command vertical ceased to exist. Identification protocols failed completely. Both sides operated the same Soviet armor. Both sides wore identical camouflage. Chechen combatants exploited this visual chaos flawlessly. A sabotage unit moved underground. They pushed up the heavy iron covers and exited a sewer collector directly between 2 Russian positions. The fighters raised their weapons. They fired long bursts into the first Russian unit. They turned. They fired into the second. Then they retreated back into the dark tunnels. They left the 2 Russian formations to destroy each other. This fratricidal crossfire raged for 6 hours. Absolute panic consumed the deployment zones. The 131st Support Battalion entered the city to deliver supplies. They drove straight into an ambush. Enemy fire annihilated the column before it reached the center. Arriving reinforcements shot at everything that moved. Friendly units returned fire. The remnants of the 131st Brigade spent 24 hours trapped in complete isolation inside the railway station. By the end of January 1st, the 131st Brigade fell into complete isolation. Casualties reached between 300 and 350 killed. This specific tactical failure would soon force the Russian army to permanently abandon armored urban assaults. Ammunition levels hit zero. Medical support ceased. The perimeter shrank. At sunset on January 1st, the brigade commander initiated an unauthorized medical evacuation. Soldiers loaded 40 critical casualties onto the last 3 operational vehicles. The convoy departed. Navigation failed. The armor moved toward the city center instead of the federal lines. Chechen anti-tank units engaged the column immediately. Rocket fire neutralized all 3 vehicles. Only 13 personnel survived to become prisoners. How did the Supreme Command react to the isolation of the communications hub? Headquarters proposed taking random civilians as hostages. Radio intercepts confirmed the General Staff's order to take civilian hostages to secure an extraction corridor. This directive contradicted foundational military protocols for rescuing encircled units. It exposed the total paralysis of the High Command. Staff officers operated in complete detachment from the tactical reality. They provided no logistical support. They sent no relief force. A subsequent transmission simply advised the trapped troops to walk out in the dark. The station defense collapsed. Heavy weapons ran dry. On January 2nd, the brigade remnants transitioned to point-blank combat, clearing the ruined terminal sectors using only hand grenades. By the evening of January 2nd, total ammunition depletion forced Colonel Savin to initiate an evacuation. The General Staff did not authorize this maneuver. The remnants left the terminal under the cover of darkness. Complete silence accompanied their movement along the railway ties. They advanced exactly 70 meters. Then RPG detonations abruptly shattered the quiet. Command cohesion dissolved. The retreating troops encountered 3 infantry fighting vehicles in the dark. These BMPs belonged to the Samara Regiment. Colonel Savin ordered the immediate loading of critical casualties. The brigade commander boarded the lead machine. The uncoordinated breakout failed. An anti-tank grenade struck the first BMP immediately. Colonel Savin sustained fatal wounds and died next to the wrecked hull. This physically eliminated the brigade's senior command echelon. A projectile hit the second vehicle seconds later. It burned in place. The third BMP breached the initial perimeter before another strike disabled it down the street. Disoriented survivors scattered into the urban grid. The terminal defense concluded with mutual attrition. Chechen formations lost 120 fighters in this specific sector. The commander's death represented just a fraction of the overall casualty statistics. The true toll emerged by January 3rd, following 60 hours of continuous combat. 100 of the 120 tanks sent into the city burned. What did a 60-hour battle in the city center lead to? The loss of over 80% of the deployed armor across all units. Total Russian casualties in those opening days reached an estimated 1,500 to 2,000 men. The 131st Brigade absorbed the heaviest blow. The unit recorded 789 personnel killed. A standard Russian motor rifle brigade operates with roughly 1,400 to 1,500 soldiers. The math was brutal. These numbers meant an irretrievable loss of over half the personnel of a single tactical unit in 2 days. The formation shattered. Narrow streets became operational traps. Black charred hulls of armored vehicles blocked the escape routes. The air smelled of burnt diesel and scorched steel. 20 out of 26 tanks burned down to the chassis. The twisted remains of 102 out of 120 armored personnel carriers choked the intersections. Rocket strikes eliminated every single deployed Tunguska anti-aircraft system. The geopolitical shockwave hit the command structure immediately. The comparison defied military logic. Russia proportionally lost more tanks in this single sector than the Soviet Army did during the entire Battle of Berlin in 1945. Urban density completely nullified heavy armor. The ground hid the final count. In 2008, excavation teams uncovered a mass grave in the city containing roughly 800 bodies. Artillery crews fired 30,000 shells every 24 hours. The destruction of the January columns forced the Russian General Staff to completely abandon armored vehicles. Total artillery suppression took their place. Ground commanders pulled surviving tanks back from the front line. Fire density reached 30,000 shells per day, a record figure for Europe since the Second World War. This daily ammunition expenditure was a direct technical admission. Infantry units could not secure urban sectors without leveling entire city blocks first. The operational strategy shifted to scorched earth. The defenders took heavy casualties. They abandoned the city and retreated to the mountains. But the territorial hold failed. A sudden counterattack in 1996 recaptured the sector. The military absorbed the tactical failure. When the Second Chechen War launched in 1999 under Vladimir Putin, the General Staff executed the revised doctrine. No tank formations drove into contested streets. Aviation and heavy batteries operated from a safe distance. High-explosive munitions erased the capital. Moscow installed a fully controlled government over the ruins.